I lost my son in less than 10 minutes. Not to an accident, not to a crime, not to death. I lost him to paperwork. One morning he went to school like always. By lunchtime, the state had taken him from his classroom and told me he was no longer safe with me. An anonymous report said I was abusing my own child. It was a lie. They later admitted the report was false. They had hospital records, photos, witnesses, and they still refused to give him back. What happened next destroyed my life. A foster family with connections, psychologists who rewrote my son's memories, court decisions made behind closed doors. My son stopped calling me Mom. Then he started calling me by my first name. Then he started asking if I used to hit him. And years later, I discovered who really made the anonymous call. Stay until the end, because the truth is worse than the lie that took my child. And the reunion you're expecting does not end the way you think it does. Sarah learned that she no longer had a son from her answering machine. The phone lay on the kitchen table beside a half-drunk mug of coffee and a plate with 2 slices of toast she had burned slightly on one side, the way she always did when she was thinking about something else. Ethan had left for school 10 minutes earlier. He had forgotten his lunchbox, kissed her on the cheek, and run down the hallway with his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders. She was rinsing the pan when she heard the soft electronic beep from the living room. She wiped her hands on a towel and pressed the button. This is a message from the King County Child Protective Services. Your child is currently under protective custody. You will be contacted shortly. The message ended. Sarah stood very still, her fingers still gripping the edge of the phone. She pressed play again. The same flat male voice repeated the message. She pressed it a third time, then a fourth, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. "My child," she whispered, "under protective custody." Her first thought was that it had to be a mistake, a wrong number, someone else named Miller. Her second thought was that Ethan had been in an accident. She grabbed her keys and ran out of the apartment without locking the door. The drive to the school took 14 minutes, though she did not remember a single red light or turn. Her hands were shaking so badly on the steering wheel that she had to grip it with both palms. She burst through the front doors of Maple Ridge Elementary, breathless, hair falling out of its clip. The secretary looked up, startled. "My son," Sarah said, her voice coming out too loud and too thin. "Where is my son? Ethan Miller." The secretary's face drained of color. I need to get the principal." "No," Sarah said, leaning over the counter. "Tell me where my son is." "Right now." The principal came out of her office, smoothing down the front of her cardigan with trembling fingers. "Mrs. Miller," she said quietly, "please come into my office." Sarah did not move. "Where is my son?" The principal swallowed. "He was taken earlier this morning." "Taken by who?" "By Child Protective Services. They showed an emergency court order. They said it was an immediate removal." Sarah laughed. It came out as a strange, broken sound. "You're telling me strangers walked into this school and took my child and you let them?" "They had legal documents. We had no choice." "For what?" Sarah shouted. "For what reason?" The principal looked down at the floor. "The order stated there was a credible threat to his safety in the home." Sarah felt the room tilt. "That's insane. That's not real. I am his mother." "I know," the principal said softly. "I am so sorry." Sarah backed away from the counter. "No," she said. "No,
no, no. You do not understand. He was fine this morning. He was laughing. He asked me for extra cereal. The principal reached out as if to touch her arm, then hesitated. They said someone reported suspected abuse. Sarah stared at her. Abuse, she repeated. Who reported that? It was an anonymous tip. Sarah turned and ran back out of the school.
She sat in her car in the parking lot for nearly 20 minutes, calling every number she could find online for CPS, getting recorded messages, being placed on hold, being disconnected. Finally, a woman answered. "Yes, your son is in protective custody," the woman said, her voice calm, as if she were discussing a library book. "Your case has been assigned to a social worker. You will be contacted." "Where is he?" Sarah said. "I want to see him. I am his mother." "That will be determined after the initial assessment." "What assessment? You took my child from school." "I'm sorry, ma'am. I cannot provide further details at this time." The line went dead. Sarah drove to the CPS office downtown. She did not remember parking. She sat in a plastic chair in a waiting room that smelled like cold air conditioning and old coffee for 3 hours. When she was finally called in, she was led into a small beige office where a woman in her 40s sat behind a desk cluttered with folders. "My name is Denise Parker," the woman said. "I am the social worker assigned to your case." "Where is my son?" Sarah said. "He is currently in temporary foster care." "You put him with strangers." "It is a standard procedure." "For what crime?" Sarah shouted. "For what reason?" Denise slid a piece of paper across the desk. "This is the report that led to the emergency order." Sarah picked it up.
"My name will remain anonymous for safety reasons," the typed statement began. "The mother, Sarah Miller, regularly beats her son. He comes to school with bruises and is afraid to go home. I am deeply concerned for his life and believe immediate action is necessary." Sarah's hands began to shake. "This is a lie," she said hoarsely. "This is all a lie." "We take all reports seriously," Denise said. "Our priority is the safety of the child." "He fell off his bike 3 days ago," Sarah said. "I took him to the emergency room. I have discharge papers. He had a bruise on his arm and a scrape on his knee. That's it." "You are welcome to submit any documentation you have." "When can I see him?" "After the initial evaluation is complete." "How long is that?" "Several days, typically." "You cannot keep my child from me because of an anonymous lie." Denise looked at her with tired eyes. "We have to follow procedure." Sarah slammed her hands on the desk. "Procedure? You stole my son." Denise did not react. That night, Sarah slept on Ethan's bed. She held his Spider-Man hoodie to her face and breathed in the smell of laundry detergent and his shampoo. She called his name into the dark room until her throat hurt. 3 days later, she was told that Ethan had been moved to a different foster home. "Why?" she demanded over the phone. "The initial placement did not meet certain requirements." "Where is he now?" "I cannot disclose that information." Sarah drove to the hospital and obtained copies of Ethan's medical records. She printed out photos from her phone showing him smiling, laughing, eating pancakes. She collected statements from her neighbors saying they had never seen her hurt her child. She brought everything to the CPS office. Denise flipped through the papers. "We will add this to your file. When do I get my son back?" "We are still evaluating." On the 4th day, Denise called her. "The medical exam found no signs of abuse. The report appears to be false." Sarah collapsed onto the kitchen floor. "Then bring him home," she sobbed. There was a pause.
There have been developments. What developments? The foster family has filed a request to continue placement. Sarah felt something cold spread through her chest. You cannot be serious. They have expressed concern about his emotional state and stability. You told me the report was false. Yes, but the process has already begun. What process? Legal proceedings. Sarah drove to the courthouse the next morning. She stood in a hallway filled with other parents and lawyers and crying children. Her attorney, a thin man with gray hair, spoke quietly. We will challenge the removal. We will present evidence. Will I get him back today? He hesitated. It may take time. Sarah laughed hysterically.
They took him in 10 minutes. But she saw Ethan for the first time 2 weeks later. They sat in a supervised visitation room divided by a glass wall. He sat at a small table coloring. Ethan, she said, pressing her palm to the glass. Baby, it's Mommy. He looked up. He stared at her without smiling. Then he looked back down at his drawing. A woman with neat hair sat beside him. He has trouble after visits, the woman said. He has nightmares. That's because you kidnapped him, Sarah said. The woman did not respond. Ethan did not come to the glass. Sarah pressed her forehead against it and began to cry. Part 2 continues with the court battle, the identity of the anonymous caller, and the foster family's growing control over Ethan's life. The visitation room smelled like disinfectant and crayons. Sarah stayed seated long after the guard told her the session was over. She kept her eyes on the empty chair where Ethan had been sitting, as if he might suddenly come back, clutching his coloring book and calling her name the way he used to when he lost her in a grocery store aisle. But he did not. The foster mother had taken his hand and let him out without looking back. In the parking lot, Sarah vomited beside her car. That night, she received an email from Denise Parker. Subject: Visitation Adjustment. Due to Ethan's increased anxiety following visits, CPS is recommending reduced contact until further notice. Sarah stared at the screen. Reduced contact? She called Denise immediately. You are punishing my child for missing his mother? She said. We are acting in his best interest. You are traumatizing him. He is showing signs of emotional distress. Of course he is. You kidnapped him. There was a pause. You need to be careful about your language, Ms. Miller. The next visitation was canceled. Then the next. Her lawyer filed an emergency motion demanding reunification. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. 3 weeks. Sarah stopped sleeping. She woke up at night convinced she had heard Ethan calling her from his room. She started leaving her phone on full volume, terrified she would miss a call that said he could finally come home. Instead, she received a different call. Denise asked her to come to the CPS office for a meeting. When Sarah arrived, Denise was not alone. A man in a gray suit sat beside her. This is Mr. Callahan, Denise said, legal counsel for the department. Callahan folded his hands. We have concerns about your emotional stability, Ms. Miller. Sarah laughed. You stole my child. You expect me to be calm? Your reactions during visits and phone calls have been documented. Because I am desperate to get my son back? Desperation can be destabilizing for a child. So now you're saying I'm unfit because I'm not smiling while my life is being destroyed? We are saying that Ethan needs a stable environment. He had one, with me. Callahan slid a document toward her. This is a temporary restraining order limiting unsupervised contact. Sarah stared at the paper. You already do not let me see him. This formalizes it. Her lawyer filed an objection. The judge denied it.
Meanwhile, the foster parents filed a petition to extend placement. Their names were Laura and Michael Hart. They lived in a large house in a quiet suburb. Michael was a mid-level manager at a tech company. Laura was a former preschool teacher. They've been foster parents for 6 years. They had no biological children. They wrote in their petition, "Ethan has bonded with us deeply. He calls us mom and dad. He shows fear when the idea of returning to his biological mother is mentioned." Sarah read the document and screamed. "That's a lie," she told her lawyer. "That's a lie! He called me mommy. He slept in my bed when he had nightmares. He cried when I left the room." Her lawyer nodded helplessly. They are building a narrative. A private investigator Sarah hired tracked down the origin of the anonymous report. It came from a public library computer. The CCTV footage showed a woman in a hoodie, her face mostly obscured. But when the investigator zoomed in on her shoes, Sarah's heart stopped. They were distinctive white sneakers with a pink stripe. She had seen them before, on Laura Hart.
She brought the footage to her lawyer. "We need to present this." The lawyer frowned. "It's circumstantial. She filed a false report to steal my child." "We can allege it, but proving intent will be difficult." At the next hearing, Sarah's lawyer submitted the footage. Laura Hart sat behind her attorney, her face serene. The judge watched the clip twice. "Is there any direct evidence this is Mrs. Hart?" he asked. "No, Your Honor," the lawyer admitted. Laura took the stand. "I do not even know where that library is," she said softly. "This is an outrageous accusation." She dabbed her eyes. "I love Ethan like my own." The judge ordered a psychological evaluation of all parties. Sarah passed. The Harts passed. The psychologist noted, "Ethan exhibits attachment anxiety and fear of separation from his current caregivers." Sarah shouted in court, "You created that fear!" The judge warned her to control herself. Denise recommended continued foster placement. 6 months passed. Sarah's savings were gone. She sold her car. She took a second job cleaning offices at night. She was allowed supervised visits once a month. Ethan stopped calling her mommy. He started calling her Sarah. The first time he did it, she felt something break inside her chest. She brought him his favorite stuffed dinosaur. He pushed it away. "Laura says I'm too old for baby toys." At the next visit, he asked her if she used to hit him.
Her vision went black. "Who told you that?" "Laura said that's why CPS took me." Sarah collapsed to her knees. "No, that's a lie. I would never hurt you." He looked uncertain. "You seem angry all the time." "I'm angry because they took you from me." He flinched. "I do not like when you talk bad about Laura." The visitation supervisor wrote in her report, "Child appears uncomfortable with biological mother's emotional intensity." Laura and Michael Hart filed for adoption. Sarah received the notice in the mail. She tore it open in her kitchen. Her hand shook so badly she could not hold the paper. The hearing was set for 3 months later. Her lawyer told her the truth. "If the judge rules in the best interest of the child, they can terminate your parental rights." "But I did nothing wrong." "That does not always matter." Sarah drove to the Hart house one night. She sat in her car across the street for hours, watching the lights. She imagined Ethan inside, brushing his teeth, being tucked into bed. She almost got out of the car. She almost knocked on the door. She did not. At the adoption hearing, Laura Hart took the stand again. "Ethan calls us Mom and Dad," she said. "He cries when visits with Sarah are scheduled. He regresses emotionally afterward." Sarah stood up. "You coached him. You poisoned him against me." The judge banged his gavel. "Ms. Miller, One more outburst and I will have you removed.
The psychologist testified. Disrupting the current attachment may cause long-term trauma. Sarah's lawyer argued, the original removal was unlawful. The report was false. The judge nodded. I agree that mistakes were made. Sarah's heart leapt. However, he continued, the child's current emotional well-being must be prioritized. He ordered a final ruling in 60 days. In those 60 days, Sarah did everything she was told. She went to therapy. She took parenting classes. She never raised her voice. She smiled during visits even when she wanted to scream. Ethan hugged her once. Just once. Then Laura started standing closer during visits, holding his hand, interrupting conversations. The visitation supervisor noted, "Child seeks reassurance from foster mother." Sarah knew she was losing him. The final hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed. The judge read his decision slowly. Based on the psychological evaluations and the child's expressed preference, the court finds that termination of parental rights is in the child's best interest. Sarah screamed. They had to hold her back. The judge continued. The adoption petition by Laura and Michael Hart is granted. The gavel came down. Sarah fainted. Part 3 will cover the aftermath, the truth about the anonymous report, and the final, devastating encounter years later.
Sarah woke up on the cold tile floor of the courthouse hallway with a paper cup of water pressed to her lips by a security guard. Her lawyer was kneeling beside her, his face gray. "It's over," he said quietly. She pushed his hand away and tried to stand. Her legs collapsed under her. "They can't not do this," she whispered. "They can't not." But they had. 2 weeks later, the adoption was finalized. Ethan Miller legally became Ethan Hart. Sarah was not allowed to attend the ceremony. She was not allowed to say goodbye. A court order prohibited all contact. Her parental rights were erased with a signature. She went home to a silent apartment filled with his things. She sat on the floor of his room and stared at his bed for hours. Then she started packing his toys into boxes. Not because she wanted to, because seeing them made her unable to breathe. She kept one thing, the Spider-Man hoodie. She slept with it for months. She quit her second job. Then she quit her first. She stopped answering her phone. Her friends tried to help at first. They brought food. They begged her to go outside. Eventually, they stopped coming. The world moved on. Sarah did not. 1 year passed, then 2, then 5. She marked Ethan's birthdays alone. She baked a cake and threw it away. She bought presents and donated them unopened. She wrote letters she was not allowed to send. In the 6th year, something happened. A woman knocked on her door. She was in her late 40s, nervous, and with tired eyes. "My name is Denise Parker," she said. Sarah froze. The former CPS social worker stood on her doorstep holding a folder. "I should not be here," Denise said. "I do not work for CPS anymore." Sarah laughed bitterly. "Come to finish me off?" Denise shook her head. "I came to tell you the truth." They sat at Sarah's kitchen table. Denise opened the folder. "The anonymous report did not come from the library," she said. "That was a cover story entered into the system later." Sarah felt her heart pounding. "Then where did it come from?" Denise swallowed. "It was filed from a home computer, from the Hart's IP address." Sarah's vision blurred. "I tried to report it internally," Denise continued. "My supervisor told me to drop it.
He said the child was better off where he was. Why are you telling me this now? Because Laura Hart confessed to her therapist. It was reported last month. Sarah stood up so fast her chair fell over. Then I can get him back. Denise looked down. No. The statute of limitations has passed, and the adoption is final. Sarah screamed. She screamed until her throat tore. You stole my child, and now you're telling me it's too late? Denise slid another paper across the table. This is my resignation letter. I could not live with it anymore. Sarah picked up the paper. Her hands were steady.
I want to see him, she said. You can't not, Denise whispered. That night, Sarah drove to the Hart house. It was bigger now, renovated. She sat in her car across the street, just like before. A tall teenage boy came out. He was 13. Her son. He was laughing. He holding a basketball. Michael Hart ruffled his hair. Good game, buddy. Sarah pressed her hand to the window. That's my son, she whispered. She got out of the car. She walked across the street. Her heart was trying to tear its way out of her chest. Ethan, she said. He turned. He looked at her, confused. Yes? I'm your mother. He frowned. My mom is inside. No, I'm your real mother. They took you from me. Michael Hart stepped between them. You need to leave, he said coldly. You lied, Sarah screamed. You stole my child. Laura Hart came out onto the porch. Her face went white. Call the police, she whispered. Ethan stared at Sarah. Why is she saying that? He asked. Laura knelt and took his hands. She's sick, sweetheart. She's been obsessed with you since you were little. Sarah felt something inside her snap. You filed the report. You admitted it. Laura's eyes flicked to Michael. Get inside, he told Ethan. Ethan hesitated. He looked at Sarah one last time. She pulled the Spider-Man hoodie from her bag. You wore this every day when you were 6, she said softly. You said it made you brave. His eyes widened. That's my hoodie, he whispered. Laura screamed. Michael grabbed Sarah. The police arrived within minutes. Sarah was arrested for trespassing and harassment. In her police interview, she told them everything. They did not care. Laura Hart was charged 2 months later with filing a false report. She got probation, no jail. The adoption was not overturned. The judge ruled, removing the child now would cause irreversible psychological harm. Final scene. 10 years later. Sarah sits in a small cafe. A young man in his early 20s stands at the counter. He turns. It's Ethan. He freezes when he sees her. You, he says quietly. You're her, Sarah whispers. He walks over slowly. You were telling the truth, he says. I found the court records and the therapy notes. Tears slide down Sarah's face. They stole you from me. He sits down. I hate them, he says. But I do not know who I am without them. She reaches for his hand. He does not pull away. They ruined both our lives, he says. Sarah closes her eyes. I waited for you every day. He squeezes her hand. I'm here now. But his eyes are full of grief, not relief. Because some reunions come too late, and some stolen childhoods can never be returned.